Well, that's good. You self-policed and went silent without being asked. What a wonderful group of people you are. I wish all of my students were exactly the same. So, welcome everybody. I know many of you were here before, but there are some new people in the room that weren't here for Peter's keynote, so I will do some reintroduction stuff. My name's Martin Compton. I lead on AI and innovation in education here at King's College London, and I'm delighted to be part of today's focus, which is AI in education, and this is part of 40 plus events that is a part of the 5-day Festival of AI organised by the AI Institute here at King's College London. So we've got a whole bunch of things going on today, and introductory things are all well and good, but obviously you want to get to the meat of it, so I'm going to say very quickly, please make sure your phones are on silent, and that if there's a fire alarm, it's unlikely to be a drill. Exits are there, and then make your way outside, please. So this morning, if you were here, you will know that we had a very interesting keynote from Peter about AI fooling people into believing that they were human-authored scripts or not being detected as AI-authored scripts, and that connection with the Turing test. And what we're going to be moving on to now is a panel event where we expand the reach of the ideas. Peter's staying with us, thankfully. I will reintroduce him first, so I'm going to give you a shorter bio this time, Peter, if you don't mind. But nevertheless, Dr. Peter Scarf is an associate professor in psychology at the University of Reading, and he heads a virtual reality and robotics lab, and has been doing some amazing and influential work in the space of AI and education. Also joining us today from the far end, we've got Laura Flynn-Coley, who is, as my bio, is the AI Campus Director for London AI Campus, and leads a pioneering program on AI literacy and skills, and is a former national computing subject expert, and is committed to inclusive and accessible AI education. And next to her, we've got Yi-Ching Lee, who I've had the pleasure of working closely with, who is a PhD student and a graduate teaching assistant here at King's College London, and is occupying that really interesting and liminal space between being a student and being a member of staff. And I think that is, you know, the people who are in that space are absolutely fascinating to talk to about how they're experiencing AI and how they're dealing with it when they're working with undergraduate students. Your research motivations and your research is on motivations and impact of online misogyny in Chinese social media. And next to Yi-Ching, and between Yi-Ching and Peter, we've got another colleague I've had the pleasure of working closely with. That's Dr. Rebecca Upshur, who's a lecturer in psychology at the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology and Neuroscience. Easier if you just call it the IOPPN, as we all do. Rebecca uses her health psychology background to bridge health and education research, employing both quantitative and qualitative methods. So, I'm going to come and sit down, make myself comfortable and less obtrusive, and I'm going to ask you two very quick questions just to kick things off. I'm going to start with you, Laura, and that is, first question, you've got one word, and that word is, how does AI make you feel?
Excited.
Excited. Okay, we'll take that. Yi-Ching?
Frustration.
Frustration, yeah. Okay, interesting. I'm trying to work out exactly where that's going. Rebecca?
Intrigued.
Intrigued. Peter?
I will go nervous.
Nervous. Okay, well, I won't tell you what I'm thinking at the moment. Okay, back to you, Laura. To what extent are we living through a period of transformation in education as a consequence of AI, if at all?
Well, just because I've been a computer science teacher with it for 15 plus years, and I've seen so much transformation within the education landscape and how we develop education, but little has changed in actually, so teaching computer science, we haven't taught anything in artificial intelligence at all. Curriculum reviews are going on at the moment, but nothing seems to be keeping up with how fast the change is happening. So within schools themselves, it's up to teachers to take it upon themselves to try and keep up with the pace of students, because students are doing these things, like Martin said earlier, they're doing things at home. They are curious, they've got, you know, very, very agile minds. So it's up to the education to try and keep up with that, but at the minute it's not. And there's a lot of fear with teachers within schools. My students have telling me this morning, they're being told, don't use ChatGPT, don't be using these AI tools. And then you've got, you know, people like me who've worked in the computer science in a role for a long, long time who are saying, do use it, but use it to your advantage. But the most important thing is teaching them how to critically use it and critically reflect on it. And that's one of the things that we're focusing on at the AI campus, which is really important for us.
Great, thank you. So same question to you, Lichi. Is this a period of transformation?
I really think so, because I've been teaching undergraduate students for 3 years, and I can see that the ability of critical thinking about writing their own original work has been changed quite a lot. And it's quite funny because I'm doing my marking at the moment, and you can see a lot of students literally just copy and paste from ChatGPT to me. Sometimes they can't even be bothered to delete the prompt they put in, which is a bit disappointing. But also, there are a lot of students that's benefiting from it, and I would say a lot of international students who were quite inconfident about their English speaking skills or like writing skills, but they have a lot of great original thinking and everything, so they are benefiting from it. I guess it really depends on how you use it.
Okay, so we've got, yes, it's changing, maybe not changing at the pace or the way that it should be. What's your view?
It's not a quick question, Martin.
I think one of the reasons I've been excited to kind of explore AI in the context of higher education is what conversations are coming to the surface because of AI, and it's things that people who are passionate about teaching and education have been trying to have for years, things around inclusivity, around types of meaningful assessment, about the process and the skills you learn from engaging in an assessment rather than just the outcome. So it's exciting to see these conversations actually being, you know, kind of brought up and surfaced. So yeah, I think it's about unpicking education and the role in AI in seeing that transformation and yeah, working out what we're all doing here, really.
Yeah, nobody knows. So Peter, go on.
Yeah, I think it's going to be massive transformation. I think we are nowhere near understanding how impactful it's going to be. I think, like you said, you know, we're only scratching the surface about what's possible and how it will change education. From a personal perspective, having used it more and more for my research, I'm a typical academic who moans about too much teaching, too much admin, I want to do some research. I'm hoping it'll have a profound impact there as well. And I think we're, in the research space also, just only scratching the surface about the changes that are going to come.
I had a meeting with Microsoft not long ago, and one of the things that one of their senior programmers said was, the biggest problem we're going to have is knowing what to do with all our free time. And I really don't buy that one, but I think there'll be different things that happen. Okay, so the way that this, thank you all for your opening contributions there. The way this is going to work, I'm going to ask a question of each of our panellists, a different one, and then maybe an additional question, but then we're going to open it up to you. So if you've got some questions in mind, you might want to do a nod to our colleagues in here who are going to be handing around the mics. But before we get to that stage, I'm going to start with you, Lichi, if that's okay. So your research is around online behaviour, and first of all, from your perspective as a researcher, and in relation to that research, what do you think the biggest risk AI poses for things like social equality in education and the way in which a lot of people are talking about it being a leveller, an equaliser, and a lot of people are saying it's absolutely opening up bigger gaps in different opportunities. Where do you stand?
I think AI is a tool, but AI literacy, the ability to use AI, is not just an ability, it's also a resource. And it reflects in real life about the inequalities that everyone's bearing, not everyone, some groups. For example, I have students who have great AI literacy, who knows how to use AI to improve their work. I also have students, as I mentioned earlier, who just copy and paste the work. That's not just because they're lazy, it's because they believe what AI gave them are good, and that mindset was because no one educated them how AI works, that AI can hallucinate, that AI can give fake or misinformation and everything. And if we push back that, where does those come from? That's varying in every student's background. Where do they come from? What kind of family background? What do their parents do? A very specific example is in a module I was teaching last term. In one of my seminars, I have students who are from private high schools, and I also have students who are from public high schools. They don't have any difference in their intelligence and their hard work, the time spent in my class, nothing. But students from private schools, they told me before they go into universities, they had small classes, they had teachers telling them how to use AI as a tool to elevate their work and most importantly, how to evaluate what AI gave them. And none of other students from public school has been in touch with that before they come to King's. I mean, now the events at King's is helping them doing that, but they are already one step back compared to all the students who had the resources. So I think just like how I do research on online behavior is reflecting the inequalities and discrimination in the real world, the fact that people's and students' AI literacy varies is also because their backgrounds are different. It's not just because, okay, I want to be lazy, I want AI to do my work. It's because they believe AI can give them amazing answers and they are not learning enough from it.
Great, thank you very much. So you've already partially answered my question, but I want to take it to the next level and put you into that liminal space I described when I introduced you. Because in effect, you're still a student because you're still completing your PhD, right? How has the advent of these technologies impacted the way that you do study and study yourself, if at all?
That's quite interesting because my supervisor, we were having a talk about AI, and she said she's feeling quite positive about it when she's marking master dissertation, because no matter if the core idea is good or not, at least the English is good out of that. I think that's maybe because she's marking the master's research and dissertation. I also had talk with my PhD colleagues, and most of them, they're quite happy with AI, and I think that's because of the way we use it. My colleague only used it to check the logic, to suggest how to revise a few sentences. We would never just ask AI to write things for us. And also, most importantly, when we are undergraduate students, and no generative AI that's this powerful today, so we still went through the very difficult time of getting academic writing training and everything. And now, for undergraduate students, we still provide them with academic training, but when AI is in front of them, they find it really hard to resist the temptation, just ask AI to do it for them. And to be honest, sometimes I can't tell if they are doing it or not. And the worst thing is sometimes a lot of students, they feel like academic writing training is not enough, it's not important anymore. So I don't know what will happen in the future, but the trending is what frustrated me. That's why I said frustration earlier.
Thank you very much. So if you're coming to the lightning talks later on today, you will meet some students that have accompanied Laura today. So we've got more students in this space. And I personally think that talking to students is absolutely fundamental involving students in these conversations is really important. I'm going to turn to you now, Laura, if you don't mind. So inclusivity is an important part of what we do. How do we make AI education or AI in education truly inclusive rather than something that just exacerbates existing inequalities?
Thank you for that. I was just speaking with my students about this morning, and we all agreed it's the exact same thing. It's exactly like you have said. So the London AI campus is born out of an idea that, so we're situated in Camden, and Camden is known for having some of the worst, income distribute. Really, like you've got like areas of like extreme poverty within Camden, and we've got these 10 secondary schools, and we've got students that come in from these 10 secondary schools, and there are those students that will not have that, you said, private like education, where you've got that within the schools where they have the capacity, the teachers have capacity to actually teach them those AI literacy skills. So to make it really inclusive, what we've got to do is we've got to ensure that we are allowing students across all of the UK to have access to this education, to AI literacy. And I even said to my students this morning, what do we mean by AI literacy? And you know, it's not very common, like young people don't always know what it is, and I think that's the thing we've got to start teaching them. We've got to start that from they're quite young. I think it's really important. I also think it's really important for our young people to, it's representation. So if you're a student and you are from a different socio-economic background, how do you ever see yourself in that role? And that puts a lot of young people off going in and searching for these particular types of jobs, or going in and applying to top universities, because they're never given that, they're not seen to be there. And I think representation is really, really, really important. And that's one of the things that we are trying to focus on within the AI campus itself. Another big thing that we find within AI and the jobs in AI is like there's massive underrepresentation of not just it's male and female. It is a very, very male dominated industry, particularly within software engineering. And I was just saying to the rest of the colleagues earlier, is like I taught computer science for many, many years, was a computer science graduate myself. And you know, it's like 85% male, 15% female. Those statistics get drastically worse when you start to factor in things like race and ethnicity and all those other factors. So it has to come from the education policy makers, sorry. And it has to start there, and it has to be brought into schools. Those computational thinking skills are one part of AI literacy, but it's really important that we get all our students to start critically reflecting. And that has to come from the top, and it has to come down to all the students within the schools within the UK.
So how do we get that momentum going? I mean, wheels turn slowly.
Wheels turn very slowly, but like, so initiatives like ours are the stepping stones. We are the first of this kind within the London AI campus, but there is plans to take this further out and across the UK. And within our campus as well, so we've got like 2 programs that run. We've got an AI Connect program where we have these wonderful 32 students, but there's only 32 students on that selected. So we also have an opportunity centre where we get students that come in from all across within the borough, and we try and offer those AI literacy skills where it's not being able to be reached within the schools themselves. So these programs need to be taken across, as you say, but it is quite a slow thing. But within schools now, we have like, within the leaderships, there are people who are now focusing on AI, and they're sending them to like courses, and they're trying to like teach the rest of the people within the school. But I think there just needs to be more emphasis on what they mean by AI literacy. How can you, it's not just a computer science. Computer science teachers should not just be teaching that in schools. That has to come across every subject. Critical thinking is everywhere. So I think that has to embed from, I say, the policymakers to the head teachers to the people responsible, and going right down to the bottom in all the schools across the UK. But again, that is a
easy job.
Easy job.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Peter, I'm going to turn to you now. So, given your research, bearing in mind that not everybody here was in your keynote as well, Do you think that universities are prepared to cope with the challenge of AI-generated or augmented assessment submissions?
Yeah, I think at the moment, no. So just for those who weren't at the talk, we did a study a couple of years back which showed that 100% AI written exam submissions for online exams were effectively undetectable and also could outperform or match real student submissions. So yeah, I think the sector is slowly waking up, but as been said previously, it's just sluggish. Yeah, it's very difficult to make change quickly. So I think the educational sector isn't well placed at the moment to to know kind of what to do going forwards.
So is this a job for government, or is it institutional level, or sector organisations? I mean, is this something you'd like the Russell Group to be working on, or JISC, or who's going to take the lead on this? It's not happening faster.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, actually. So I don't know if there's anyone from the Office for Students here. I kind of pondered why we haven't heard anything from the Office for Students or something like that. And I can't speak for them, but I guess they don't know what to do either at the moment. Should it be kind of regulatory? I think to some extent it would have to be, because it already is, yeah. We have to have some kind of framework to guarantee learning and the quality of degrees kind of widely. So I think there would have to be some regulatory piece. But I think everything's just very fragmented at the moment. So, I've just been so impressed by the huge amount of work King's has been doing in the AI space. We've talked about this before. Really leading the way in the discourse. And, that's not all universities, yeah? And then at individual universities, it's kind of fragmented again, in that you've got some universities who have got very clear policy, others who haven't. And another level it's fragmented. You've got some schools who are just all in and just kind of really embracing things, others which are just kind of, being a bit more reluctant. Then another layer down, you've got more fragmentation. I've got colleagues in my department who are just really kind of engaged in AI and kind of working out what the future of education is going to look like. And those who just kind of saying, well, I'm just going to hope it's going to go away. So, bit of a waffly answer, I'm afraid.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much. So, talking to some of the good work that's happening at King's, Rebecca and colleagues in IOPPN and students, has to be said, have been responsible for some of that. But your focus is on health psychology, right? So I was wondering, is there a way, or can we ensure that AI supports rather than compromises or makes worse the well-being and mental health crisis that we're experiencing in higher education? What are your thoughts on that?
So my research focuses on how we support student well-being through the curriculum, how we teach, and thinking about assessment as well, with the idea that student well-being and learning cannot be disentangled. The way students feel impacts how they learn, and the way they learn impacts their well-being. That relationship is strong. And then when we bring AI into that conversation, there's a lot to think about. In the study that I conducted last year, that, as you say, was very much led and co-created by two amazing undergraduate research assistants. They were running focus groups with other students to find out what sort of support they wanted to be able to use AI in their learning. And they found that students were very nervous and anxious about how they use AI and in what way it could be meaningful. They were also very concerned about how staff were perceiving how their AI use and what that meant for them. They were very keen to have open discussions with staff about this, but they very much needed staff to initiate those conversations, to create that safe space, and see openness and transparency from staff to be able to have those open conversations. And anecdotally, I think through teaching undergraduate psychology students, even having these types of conversations with first-year psychology students, they are very careful when you're able to create that space for discussion. They are very careful and conscientious about thinking about ways in which AI can be meaningful and support their learning versus ways that actually it's not useful or even hinders their learning. So I do think we need those open conversations to support well-being and learning in students, and I really think it's our responsibility as educators to hold that space with students.
Yeah, so it's interesting, earlier Peter referenced the recent paper, all students are cheating their way through college and university, and what you've just said there kind of counteracts that there isn't this, suddenly we're all cheats.
Well, they think that staff are thinking that, but
right.
they resent that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's really interesting. How much do you, because I was really impressed with the outputs of your research, how much do you think that the quality of the outputs was a consequence of having students facilitating those focus groups?
It was instrumental. I mean, if I'm honest, I went in there being very keen about researching this, and I was fully prepared to lead the focus groups, and it was actually the students who said to me, no, you shouldn't. We should, because we want to have these conversations, and you being there is going to compromise. And they were so right, and they taught me a lot in that project.
And I mean, that's a good template, I think, for engaging students. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to ask one more question. It's going to be to all of you, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. So maybe start waving to the people who will be taking the mics around to indicate you would like to ask a question. But so while that's happening in the background and seamless, as it inevitably will be, I'm going to stay with you, Rebecca, at the moment, and ask, so beyond all of the hype, this is about beyond the hype, AI education, what would you say, if you could have our Vice-Chancellor's ear, would be one practical step this or any educational institution, be it school, university, college, should prioritise right now in terms of its response to AI?
Big questions, Martin. I think equity is really important. I think what you were all saying really about having that opportunity for students to be equipped with the skills, have that level playing field. We can't have a situation where some students have access to all these tools and know how to use them versus students who are very disadvantaged in that respect.
Well, I found out today that Google, to try and get us hooked, are offering free access to their Gemini Pro for all students before the end of June for 15 months. So, there are things to suck you in and get you dependent on these things where institutions aren't able to provide that. I think these big tech companies are recognising that get them early and you get them addicted, because everyone talks about ChatGPT. Obviously Gemini, when everyone's talking about Gemini and Microsoft and Copilot. So thank you for that. Laura, same question. What one thing can we...
I completely agree that it has to be equitable, and also as well, not just using the tool. Some people across don't have maybe access, like financially, to particular, like the digital divide across the UK is quite stark. And I think, I completely agree with you. I think that's the most important thing, is trying to do something where, I know it's a big thing, but it's equitable for all students. And the issue is as well, isn't it, to do with, quality of assessment, like you say, focusing on, like in primary schools, SATs and those types of assessments, they're not always really necessary, and, getting students thinking from they're quite little, isn't it? And something that there's research coming out saying, like, parents get involved in this with their young children as well, but not every parent, again, will have the educational background to do that with their young children. So maybe, like, one thing I think is really important is, like, getting youth and communities involved. So local youth centres, offering, people can offer their time. Lots of people, like you say, within the industry. So our AI campus is actually supported by Google and Google's DeepMind. So you've got lots of people in there who are very willing and very keen to come and do things. And it's really interesting, my students will know, it's when they say we want to do this, and they'll say, like, you know, they've spoken in front of lots of people across the world, and they've given these massive keynote speeches, and they sometimes they're a bit nervous to speak in front of 16-year-olds, because 16-year-olds will tell you straight away if they're not interested in what you say. It's really interesting, but they're super, super keen. So organisations like ours trying to like get in the local community and trying to help with that, you know, that getting it more equitable for young people.
It's interesting what you say about parents not having the skills often. I think in education, a lot of the key stakeholders, senior leadership, average teacher, lecturer, they don't have the skills, or don't feel like they have the skills to be able to make informed judgments. And that's a critical part of the problem. Okay, I'm going to make it harder on you, Eugene, by coming to you last. So, Peter, what one thing can we do as an institution?
So I was on a panel yesterday with staff at various schools in Reading, and they said what you just said. They said top of their list was training. I think a lot of educators feel kind of out of depth. They kind of realise that things are going to change. They don't know how to implement that change. They don't feel they've got enough kind of time or expertise or knowledge to implement that change. So in terms of kind of talking to VCs, none to be named, I think just universities need to go all in. We've already mentioned multiple times about the sluggishness of the sector. We've already kind of contrasted that with the massive speed of the tech sector. I think all universities, the educational space as a whole, schools as well, need to realise that this is not going away, it's just gaining more and more momentum, and the time is now to get going. Otherwise, we're just going to be left behind.
Great, thank you. And I'm not sure if Professor Cooker is in the audience, Eugene, but what's on your top of your wish list?
I think AI literacy course should be in curriculum, and it needs to be mandatory. It doesn't need to be super hard and a written exam and anything, but it needs to be mandatory because it needs to give out information that this is a talkable subject, and we need to force students to talk about it. I mean, I just mentioned I've been teaching for 3 years, and I think my teaching style is quite fun and interesting way, so my students and I have a quite good relationship. They talk to me about everything. Their family issue, they had a new boyfriend and a girlfriend and everything. But none of them want to speak about AI to me. That's not because it's so difficult or anything. They have this mindset that, okay, I'm using it, but I can't tell people I'm using it because it's like cheating. That's just not good, because if you're using it unguided and you don't have knowledge about this, we don't know how they would use it. So in order to, and I know there's students here today as well, because that's because you're already interested and you know you can use it to make your life and your study better. But for students who are still having the mindset that AI is a bad thing, we need to force them to at least have the open talk and see what are their concerns. And I think that's doable. I don't know.
No, thank you. I mean, I think some people might consider that quite radical to mandate that, but a lot of people are saying the same thing. It's interesting how much we've heard the word cheating today. I think we need to define what we mean by cheating, or at least perhaps even redefine what we think cheating is and what's appropriate and inappropriate, because nobody seems to know. Get 2 academics in a room and they'll give you different definitions of cheating. So, yeah, I think that's, you're making me think about that. Okay, so let's open this up to the audience. Where are we going first? We've got somebody? Okay, so we've got somebody over here. You've got the mic, that's great. Then we'll work our way along the back, how that sounds. And we will come to you next, actually, because you missed out last time. Yes, please.
Hi. Yeah, really enjoyed the panel. Yeah, we've been talking about student literacy and AI. Can you hear me?
I don't think the mic's on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for such an interesting panel. Yeah, you've been discussing student literacy in AI and also the necessity for educators to be trained in AI as well. I was just wondering if you've used AI in the classroom to adapt to course content to different ways of learning. I'm just thinking, in the past I've had students with autism or ADHD, and all I can do really to accommodate their needs is give them extra time or a quiet space to sit an exam. And when maybe the useful thing really is to adapt certain assessments or course content to different ways of learning. I was at the talk yesterday about children mental health and the increase in diagnoses of ADHD, autism, and just different ways of processing information. So I was wondering if that's something you've given thought to, if you've done that, and if you think that is also something to implement in universities.
Laura, do you want to start?
Yeah, so for me, from an education perspective, it is something that I've used quite a lot. My son is autistic, so I have lived experience, and so if we're coming to do homework and he's got a language delay with part of his autism diagnosis, so we will sit down and he loves ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, because it helps to break down. It's the way, as you said, it's the way you learn. It's not that you can't learn. And I think personally that for children with neurodiversities, dyslexia as well, it is going to be an absolute game changer. But I do believe that we still need more training. For me, it has lived experience. I live with my son, as I said, but my son's autism won't be the same as another child's autism, or how ADHD experiences the world. And I think that there needs just to be a lot more training for teachers on how to use it, or sometimes allowing children to realise that this is something that really will help them. I think, and for my son, I can see, he's 11 years old, and he said to me many times, Mummy, I feel stupid, because he can't keep up with that curriculum. But once he sits down and sits with these tools or learns through visual ways, I can see the pride in him. I can see that he feels so confident in himself, and that's something that I've actually taken and put into the classroom, which has been very, 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 yeah. But I think that is an absolute game changer for me.
Okay, I'm sure other colleagues would have plenty to say as well, but I'm going to try and get us a greater spread. Can we go directly to our colleague?
Hello, thank you panel, very interesting talk. In the context of exams and assessments, I was wondering whether or not universities up and down the country are busily writing a policy document now as to what is acceptable and not acceptable as far as students are concerned, as to what they can do with AI, and what will be the key point in that policy document as to what is acceptable. In addition to that, I noticed a lot of people talking about ChatGPT. I was just wondering whether or not that's the default search engine or AI that students are using.
So I'm going to ask Peter and then Rebecca to respond to this. At King's, just for clarity, we give students access to the Copilot large language model, not the full Copilot suite, because Microsoft call everything Copilot these days. It's ridiculous. But, so to the ChatGPT equivalent in Microsoft is called Copilot. Every student has access to that, and hardly any of them use it. You only have to walk around the library or the canteen, see everyone's got ChatGPT open. It is the go-to default tool, at least here at King's. So to answer that bit of your question myself, but Peter, in terms of policy, I know you were talking at the break about a little bit about policy.
So was the question about kind of consistency across universities, or our university? Yeah, I kind of refer a little back to my fragmented rambling before. I think it differs a lot across universities at the moment. I know colleagues at some universities where they've got a kind of university-wide AI strategy. They're building AI into all of their courses. Looking at King's, for instance, I think that's a really great example of taking these things seriously. Whereas I think we've got other universities who just aren't doing that at the moment. I think Reading, I think Reading are doing a great job. I work there, but I think they're forward thinking. We do have a very clear AI kind of guidance in for our students. It is being built more into courses where kind of the students are taught how to use AI. I do think there are difficult gaps at the moment. So you talked about kind of acceptable and unacceptable use. So a lot of universities are using a kind of so-called traffic light system. So one category where you can't use AI at all, one category when we're all in, and one category when we're kind of in between, and you can use it for some things but not others. I think that's kind of a bit of, I said in my talk, I think that's a bit of a stopgap measure to kind of ease the transition to, this, for lecturers, how do we build AI in? And I think at the moment, it's just very undefined, I think, what is acceptable versus non-acceptable, even with these traffic light systems, yeah? So I think it's going to be a kind of iterative process, and one which we're going to be engaging with our students with, yeah? I think we're all on this massive learning journey, and I don't know what's going to come around next, so I think we're just in this in-between period at the moment. I don't know whether there'll be any sector-wide guidance. I guess that might help in terms of consistency, but I get the impression that things are now changing. There's fewer and fewer universities who are not now kind of taking this seriously and working out how to build it into their policies, their teaching, their education.
So I work at the centre of King's. Becky's in one of the faculties. So is there a policy difference in your faculty? How do you see policy from a faculty level? What's happening there?
Yeah, so King's has a guidance that's student-facing and staff-facing that's institution-wide. What we're hearing from students is that when we appropriately draw their attention to that guidance, they find it easy to read and it's very understandable. I think it's more of how we get that information to students. You can't just chuck it in an email and say read it, because they probably won't, like I saw with these communications. So we need to bring it into the curriculum, we need to talk about it. But students from the research study that I mentioned earlier really want module leaders to verbally discuss the guidance and the policy and kind of tailor it and say what is appropriate use of AI within a module, within a specific assessment, so that they have that confidence around how they're using it responsibly.
Thank you both. Thank you for the question. We're going to go along the back row and then we'll come to the middle here. Is that okay? We've got a question on the back row again, and then I'll come to the middle here, and then at the back, and then over there. Okay.
Hi. Google and OpenAI seem hell-bent, to my mind, on making their systems impenetrably anthropomorphic and really trying to hide the fact that, to my mind, as a computer scientist, that it's a system of inputs and outputs, that it's kind of the old garbage in, garbage out. And so, to what extent would you say that that's important for people to understand and to sort of move away from this kind of anthropomorphism? And if you do think it's important, how do we do that?
We were talking about this earlier today. Yi-Ching, what do you think about the naturalness of the exchanges and the way that we're talking and treating these technologies as if we were talking to another human?
It's interesting, but I don't know if anyone saw the news about how the CEO or someone from OpenAI said if we say hello, thank you is actually useless and wasting a lot of their energy. I kept saying it because when AI take over the world, they're going to spare me. No, I was joking. I'm not sure if it does have an impact on it, but I think a lot of students are benefiting from it, talking to AI just like human beings. For example, one of my students said they asked ChatGPT to be her mother. Because she and her mother doesn't really have a very nice relationship, and she never experienced like loving and caring and everything. She's not like drowning it, she's perfectly sober about this is not her mother, but she's still benefiting from it. And when she just moved to the UK from another country, she doesn't have any friends here, she finds ChatGPT to talk to. And I think that's beyond curriculum or academic study. I think that's a good thing for her. I also know news about how people think generative AI, if you talk to them as a human being, because they're not real human, it can make you more depressed because it will just go along with what you say. If you say, I feel like I'm a failure, and things like that. It might not end well, but in general, I think talking to AI like you're talking to a human being, on the one hand, I think some people need it. On the other hand, I personally treat it like it's like a human because it makes me feel better, because I feel like it's helping me. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you. Laura, do you want to add anything?
Just on that point, so the Raspberry Pi Foundation in Cambridge are actually quite against that, and one of the things that they are trying to teach young students within, they've got this curriculum called Experience AI, is that the students understand that it's not a person that they're talking to, that they have to really understand that it's a machine. And they're very anti, you know, the images that we have like brains and people, and then this AI, they're saying like, because for young people who maybe are quite vulnerable, like you say, you know, it can stir up a whole can of worms, can't it, sometimes? So it's just very interesting that, and for some people, like, yeah, I agree with you, it can be very, very helpful, but I think we've still got to realise that it is just a thinking, well, it's a machine. And again, I think there's a lot of misconception about what AI is actually really capable of, and I think that's one thing that we've got to make clear to our young people as well. Like, one of the things we discuss is like the you know, narrow AI, and we hear a lot about AGI, but most people don't know what that means, so we spend a bit of time looking at that and like reactive machines and limited memory and things like that. But yeah, it's within the education in computer science at schools, they're very against that.
It is interesting because by definition it's kind of the way that it works.
Yeah.
Natural language in, natural language out. I work with some school children age 11 upwards, and the first thing that we got them to do was to draw AI, and the younger students, to a person, were drawing robots and robotic faces and speech bubbles and all of this kind of stuff. And it wasn't until you got to the sort of much older students, 15, 16, that you got some sophistication in their understanding. But if we're already fossilising at the age of 10, 11, 12, that this is somehow a robot talking and conflating robotics with machine learning, then we're going to create a problem for our own back. But nevertheless, I hear everything that Yi-Ching says as well. It's so difficult. Okay, to the middle.
Thank you. Okay, so great panel, lovely discussions. My question is funny, that it's interesting you use that example, because my question is actually around international students. I know that across the UK, international students make up a huge percentage of the student body, and I don't know what percentage it is in King's College, but I can imagine it's quite high. So do you see a disparity in the way that students use it, international versus British students use AI in general? And is this something that KCL is putting into consideration during discussions about AI usage in the university?
Thank you. I mean, I know colleagues have done research on exactly that. Becky, do you know anything about this?
Yeah, I had a BSc project this year actually that looked at the differences between international and home students in the UK and use of Gen AI tools. We're still analysing the data a little bit, but we did find some differences there, especially for international students where English wasn't their first language. You know, they were using it in different ways to home students. And also some differences between postgraduate and undergraduate students as well in terms of AI use. But yeah, more to come with going in depth with our analysis on that.
I think there are very different, obvious cultural differences emerging about acceptability and trust and use and ways of using. It is such a nascent area. Basically, nobody knows anything, you know. And yeah, start to do some research. That's the answer. The question of the night.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all the discussions today. I've been an FE teacher for 23 years here in the UK, and very skeptic about AI in the beginning until my students, I teach ESOL. So ESOL, it's English to speakers of other languages, for those who don't know. Right at the bottom, if you like, in terms of how the students are perceived in the college, and by their peers, by people doing other courses. I've always been very passionate about learner training. So the very beginning of my courses has always been, how can you extend your learning? And then AI came along. Personal tutor, 24/7. They could really get their tuition. I teach a lot of refugees and asylum seekers, people who would not be able to afford private tuition. My daughter was doing A-levels. I need a private tutor for psychology. How much is it? In my classrooms, I had kids, as you were saying, without parents here, with migrants who came 16 to 18, so unaccompanied minors, who were using AI as friends for guidance, but as a tutor when they were trained to do it. In the beginning, when they started using, I didn't know anything about AI, so I thought, are you using AI? Then I trained myself. So my question is, I become quite excited, I liked your word in the beginning, about AI, because I felt that it could narrow the divide. I could see my students really benefiting from this private tutor. But I've been lucky, I'm on a sabbatical at the moment, and I've been lucky, I went back to Brazil, and I've been actually delivering workshops on AI for other educators in Brazil, and businesses, and here in the UK as well. But everywhere I go, there is a cohort of teachers who can't share my excitement, who will not buy into the idea of this, how transformative this technology could be for these students, to really lift them up. My question is, how do we get these educators to buy in? I always feel that when I deliver the workshops, at the end, I have people coming to me saying, okay, I get it. How can we scale that?
It's like you preempted my spare question. That's exactly that. Peter, I'm going to ask you, how do we get people to buy in? And should we be obliging them to buy in? Yi-Ching wants to mandate it for all students. Force them to use your words. What can we do about the reluctant educator?
It's a good question. I know some of those. I don't know the answer, I'm afraid. If I did, I'd be using the skill. I think things are changing. So definitely at my university, there are far fewer reluctant educators now. And I think part of that is just encouraging discourse between colleagues. At Reading, we are in the process of trying to set up different local communities of practice in each school, and then seeing how those kind of feed into a university community of practice. And I think talking will really help. So I've, as part of what I've been doing at the university, been running some what we call getting started with Gen AI sessions for staff. And what has struck me there is that Someone else mentioned safe space with your students, to discuss. I think staff feel the same way as well. They just want a kind of venue where they can kind of say, what's going on? What do I do? And those getting started sessions, I think, have really, really helped. We've got staff who came and just been, well, I've been totally unplugged. I thought it was going to go away. I don't know anything about it. And then they're kind of going away saying, wow, I didn't know what it was capable of. You know, they've never even had to go with it, kind of thing. So, you know, I don't have a definitive solution, but I think with most things, talking with one another and working together is going to help.
Very quickly, Becky, have you got any go-to suggestions for this?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's understanding the reluctance and where that's coming from. I suspect that a lot of it is fear or thinking that you're not going to be good at something, so you avoid it. We've all been in that situation somewhere. And I think, dare I say the COVID word, because we're trying to avoid those conversations now, but you know, many staff are very tired from the impact that had on them, having to learn all these new digital skills then. They're not ready for another wave, you know. So it's just having that understanding and bridging that gap.
And of course, a lot of people have legitimate concerns about copyright, data security, environmental damage, which Eugene referenced just a little while ago. So yeah, so there's all of that going on as well. Thank you for your question. There was a question and then there was somebody at the back that I know got so many questions.
We missed out last time.
Sorry, yeah, so here first.
Yeah, hello, thanks very much. I'm actually a student from King's and Computing, student from 95, so I can kind of consider myself in the mature generation. How do you deal with educators who may have fear of using technology or even putting data into AI?
So, Eugene, fear in the academic community. Can you reassure them?
I can't because we just don't. I never put my actual raw data in there. I don't know. I was guaranteed by its policy that it's safe, but I'm just suspicious of everyone and every tool before I can publish my thesis, so I don't. But that's just me. I talk to all the researchers and teaching staff as well. They also don't. They use it as a tool, but not input everything in there. So I haven't overcome
I've got all my survey data for recent research into a Claude project. So yeah, we can have a chat about that. That would be interesting. Who did I miss over here? Who was it? Who's got the microphone? I'm sorry. There we go. My apologies. I see so many hands go. I'm so sorry that we're not going to get to everyone.
I don't think this is on, but
Shout.
Hello? Oh,
That's it.
good. Right. Hi. Thank you for your insights so far. So my question is prompted by the fact that I've been in teaching and education for years. Now I'm supporting academics with technology and AI, but I'm also doing an MSc in psychology. So I wanted to ask something about the cognitive impact this might be, the AI use might be having on students. Is there a question that we should be asking, or is there evidence already about whether there's a shift in how students retain and process information because of the potential over-reliance on AI? I think we've established they're using AI a lot. So do they rely less? Do we think, is there evidence to suggest they rely less on their own memory now by offloading all this cognitive information on AI tools?
So you're going to have to talk to my colleague, Charlotte Contalta here, because this is part of her research. But Becky, a quick response to this one.
You can answer this one much better than I can. I mean, we don't know the long-term effects yet, but yeah, I think over-reliance is a concern for staff and for students as well, students that I've been talking to. So I think, yeah, just keep talking to students about this so that they understand the meaningful ways in using it so that they don't become over-reliant. And I think if we're having those conversations about environmental impact and stuff as well, that will influence how and when they're using it. But sorry, that's probably a poor answer based on what you can answer as well.
I'm so sorry if we didn't get to you, and if you feel shortchanged by my inability to do allocation of questions fairly. but I think it's indicative how many hands went up, how interesting this has been. So please, will you join me in thanking all of our